So basically the story goes on how he, does a whole bunch God does a whole bunch of stuff to this Pharaoh, plagues and all this other stuff because he's trying to be bad to the Israelites and that. So he has a bunch of stuff done to him, by God, to the Pharaoh. And finally, the Pharaoh says, okay, well, screw it. I'll get rid of these Israelites. Just get out of here. I don't want to see you anymore. So they leave, and this is where Moses split the sea, and then they go through, and God makes the sea go back onto the soldiers, and so the Israelites get away, right? And then it goes to this part right here.
Kingdom is all about. It's about how God is on a mission to confront evil in his world and to redeem those who are enslaved to evil. God is going to bring his people into the promised land where his divine presence will live among them. This story is what it looks like when God becomes king over his people. So after the Israelites sing their song, the story takes a sharp turn. The Israelites, they're trekking through the wilderness on their way to Mount Sinai, and they're hungry, they're thirsty, and they start criticizing Moses and God for even rescuing them. They say they long for the good old days in Egypt. I mean, it's crazy. So God graciously provides food and water for Israel in the wilderness, but these stories, they cast a dark shadow. And we begin to wonder, could it be that Israel's heart is just as hard as Pharaoh's? Now, the second half of the book of Exodus opens as Moses leads Israel to the foot of Mount Sinai, where God invites the nation of Israel to enter into a covenant relationship. And here we reach another key moment in the biblical storyline, because this is picking up and developing God's promise to Abraham. So remember, from the book of Genesis, God promised that through Abraham's family, somehow he would restore his blessing to all of the nations.
Remember, when he says Abraham's family, what he means is Abraham's bloodline, okay? His monarchy, royal bloodline. That's what he's saying.
And here we find out more. God says that if Israel obeys the terms of the covenant, they will be so shaped by God's laws and teaching and justice that they will become a kingdom of priests, which means that they will become God's representatives and show all of the other nations what God is truly like. Now, the people of Israel...
all they have to do is follow this bloodline. That's all they have to do. Just make a covenant with the bloodline.
Eagerly accept the offer. And so God's presence appears right on the top of Mount Sinai in the form of cloud and lightning and thunder. And Moses goes up as their representative, and God opens with the basic terms of the covenant, the famous 10 Commandments. So Moses writes down all of these laws, and he brings them down to the people who, again, eagerly agree to enter into this covenant with God. And once they do so, God takes the relationship forward another step. He tells Moses that he wants his holy and divine and good presence to come and dwell right in the midst of Israel, which develops another aspect of God's covenant promises. So remember, after humanity's rebellion in the garden, it was access to God's presence that was lost. But now it's through the family of Abraham that God...
through the bloodline of Abraham. See, without the royal bloodline, you can't do anything. You'll just ruin it like the Garden of Eden did, you know what I mean? You need to embrace the bloodline. The royal bloodline is the only way. If you do not do that, then you will be destroyed. But if you do, then you never have to worry about anything. Just let society work itself out. Don't worry, the king and God will do everything for you. Don't worry about that now.
God's presence is becoming once again accessible through this covenant relationship. And first with this...
Yeah, because you can't, without going through the bloodline of Abraham, you have nothing with God. There's nothing holding you two together, man, without the not without the monarchy.
And then somehow, one day to all nations. So what follows are 7 chapters of detailed architectural blueprints about this sacred tent called the tabernacle. There's an outer courtyard with an altar, and then in the center...
So then they're just talking about building this building for God.
Moses is up on the mountain receiving the blueprints for the tabernacle. Down below at the camp, The Israelites, they're losing patience. And so they ask Moses' brother Aaron to make for them a golden calf.
Now think about this. God's up in the top of the mountain. Everyone can see the clouds and the thunder, showing God's there and that. And this is Aaron. This is Moses' brother. Okay, I want you to remember this because he's going to come up a little later there. This guy is not good, okay? He's making golden calves, worshiping to other gods, so he's not righteous in any way.
Idol, so they can...
But he's got the royal bloodline.
Worship it as the God who saved them. Moses' brother Aaron to make for them a golden calf idol so they can worship it as the God who saved them out of slavery in Egypt. Now God's presence, it's right there on top of the mountain. They can see it. But here they are below, breaking the first two commands of the covenant they just agreed to. No other gods and no idols. Now what follows is really important. God knows what's happening down below. And so he first invites Moses into his own anger and pain. And he tells Moses what he wants to do, just to wipe Israel out. But Moses intercedes by appealing to God's character. He says, first of all, destroying Israel would be going back on your covenant promises to Abraham.
See, that destroying everyone would destroy the bloodline of Abraham. You can't do that. You promised to keep the bloodline, the monarchy alive forever. You can't do that. Oh, no. The only thing that's saving everyone, okay, is because Moses has the bloodline of Abraham, okay? It's the only thing that's saving them is what he's saying. Only the bloodline can save these people.
And then Moses appeals to God's reputation among the nations. What would they think if they see you destroying your own people? And so God accepts Moses' intercession, and he relents. And while he does bring his judgment on those who instigated the idolatry, he forgives the nation as a whole and promises to renew his covenant.
Meaning,
and it's right here.
Meaning he forgives the monarchy and the bloodline, but everyone else he's going to screw over.
And above all, God is faithful to his promises, even though it means, he knows, he's committing himself to a people who are utterly faithless. And so after renewing the covenant with Israel, God commissions Moses to go ahead and build the tabernacle. And once again, we get 5 long chapters describing in detail the construction of the tabernacle. And it all comes together in the final chapter where the tabernacle's finished. God's glorious divine presence comes and hovers over the tent, and our hopes are high. And so Moses, he goes right up to enter into the tent, and he can't. He actually can't go in, and that's how the book ends. It's the book of Leviticus. It's the 3rd book of the Bible, and it's set right after the exodus of the Israelites from their slavery, when God brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai and invited Israel into a covenant relationship. Now, they had quickly rebelled and broke that covenant.
Remember, the covenant is about a bloodline, Abraham's bloodline that goes through Moses, okay?
And God had wanted for his glorious presence to come and live right in the midst of Israel in the form of this tabernacle. But Israel's sin has damaged the relationship. So, at the end of the previous book, Exodus, Moses, as Israel's representative, could not even enter God's presence in the tent. The book of Leviticus opens by reminding us of this fundamental problem. It says, "The Lord called to Moses from the tent." So the question is, how can Israel, in their sin and selfishness, be reconciled to this holy God? That's what this book is all about. How God is graciously providing a way for sinful, corrupt people to live in his holy presence. Now, the book has a really amazing symmetrical design. It explores the 3 main ways that God helps Israel to live in his presence. The outer sections are descriptions of the rituals Israel was to practice in God's holy presence. The next inner sections focus on the role of Israel's priests as mediators between God and Israel. And inside of that are 2 matching sections that focus on Israel's purity. And then right here at the center of the book, there's a key ritual, the Day of Atonement, that brings the whole book together. The book concludes with a short section where Moses calls on Israel to be faithful to this covenant.
Now, most of this is just BS stuff, so I'm going to skip over a lot of it.
Let's dive into the book. The first section, now the section's about Israel's priests. You have Aaron and his sons first ordained to enter into God's presence on behalf of Israel. And then in this
I want you to notice, Aaron is the brother of Moses. Moses is the leader of so they both have the same bloodline, right? Now, Moses gets to be the leader, and all his kids gets to be the leader, and this priest guy, okay, is the brother of Moses, and his kid gets to be the priest, and so on, or the prophet, and so on and so forth. So both of them are royal. They're both, you got one guy that's the prophet or the priest, and one guy that's the king, the leader, Moses. It's like, and they're all related. The book is written by these royal people, and I'm supposed to buy all this. It's like the God loves kings and dictators. Really? 'Cause this sounds like a dictator king did this, man. This is ridiculous.
Matching section, we find the qualifications for being a priest. The priests were called to the highest level of moral integrity and ritual holiness because...
See, this is what I'm talking about. Just 2 minutes ago, in the last book, we were talking about how this guy Aaron was making a golden bowl so that everyone could worship him right at the same exact time, and he could actually literally see God, his presence up on the mountain, right in front of his face. He's making a golden bowl so that they could all worship the golden bowl instead of God. This is the highest level of moral integrity and ritual holiness? Is this Bible written by kings? Or is it written by God?
Because they represented the people before God, but then also represented God to the people. Now,
yep, Aaron's brother, the bloodline, they represent God to the people. See how that goes? See, they tell the people what God's saying. Moses, the king, says, you worship this bloodline.
we find out why the priest's holiness matters so much back here in this first section. Right after the family of Aaron was ordained, 2 of his sons waltz right into God's presence and flagrantly violate the rules. And so they are consumed by God's holiness on the spot. It's a haunting reminder of the paradox of living in God's holy presence, because it's pure goodness, but it becomes dangerous to those who rebel and insult God's holiness. And so it's important that Israel's priests become holy, and also that all of the people of Israel become holy. Now here at the center of the book, we find a long description of one of Israel's annual feasts, the Day of Atonement. Odds are that not every Israelite's sin and rebellion would be covered through the individual sacrifices, and so once a year, the high priest would take 2 goats. One of these would become a purification offering and atone for the sins of the people. And the other was called the scapegoat. The priest would confess the sins of Israel and symbolically place them on this goat, and then it would be cast out into the wilderness. Again, this is a very powerful image of God's desire to remove sin and its consequences from his people.
And I want you to notice, I just left this scapegoat in, so I don't think people understand it. A scapegoat is actually a technical term in the Bible. And basically, the Bible always seems to teach no accountability. No accountability at all. Okay? The only thing that you're ever accountable for is going against the king, it seems like. You know what I mean? All you need is a scapegoat. You do something bad, just do a scapegoat. Don't worry about it. Just do an animal sacrifice. That's okay.
So that God can live with them in peace. The book concludes with Moses calling Israel to be faithful to all of the terms of the covenant. And he describes the blessings of peace and abundance that will result if Israel obeys all of these laws.
Yep, if you follow the covenant, which is the bloodline, right, then you will be, and you're obedient to the bloodline, you'll have peace and abundance in the land. Yeah, and if they go against the bloodline, against the monarchy, their unfaithfulness, it'll be a disaster and exile from their land.
Now, if you want to see how Leviticus fits into the big storyline, it's helpful to look at the first sentence of the next book of the Bible.
Notice how he says the main storyline of the Bible, that they want you to know, that the Bible wants you to know, this is the main thing that they want you to know.
Numbers. It begins, the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent. So we can see that Moses is now able to enter God's presence on behalf of Israel. The book of Leviticus, it worked. So despite Israel's failure, God has provided a way for their sin to be covered, so that God...
Yep, just all you got to do is follow the bloodline, follow the monarchy, bow down, worship it.
God can live with sinful people in peace. And that's what the book...
Yeah, he can't live with you unless you got some bloodline in there. That's why he destroyed everyone and left Noah.